their Indiana Fever roster, because they had so many injuries. They really did a great job of staying engaged with their season. I can really only imagine for a player like Caitlin, you come off your college season, epic. You go straight to your WNBA season. You finish a first teamer. You have this long off season where you probably can't wait to get back on the court, only to have like a couple of injuries, sideline or the ins and the outs, and then eventually being completely out. That is a challenge.
Pause right there wasn't hesitation. It wasn't someone gathering their thoughts or catching their breath. That was someone measuring every word with surgical precision, deliberately avoiding the one thing everyone watching was waiting to hear. Sue Bird was asked a direct, no-escape question about Caitlin Clark's performance after returning from injury. And instead of breaking down her play, instead of highlighting what Caitlin brings to the floor, she abruptly shifted the focus to staying involved from the sidelines. Sit with that for a moment, because in poker terms, that's a tell. A big one. And it reveals far more than it hides. Here's what's really unfolding inside Team USA camp right now. Not the polished version, not the PR-approved storyline, but what's happening beneath the surface. Caitlin Clark has just arrived in North Carolina for what should be her defining moment, preparation for her international debut, her chance to prove herself on the global stage. But the environment surrounding her, the coaching decisions, the messaging, the carefully curated structure, is raising some deeply uncomfortable questions. And in that Sue Bird, the general manager steering this entire operation, let slip just enough to make the situation feel even murkier than it already appeared. From the outside, it looked questionable. Now, it looks calculated.
And lead-ups. And I think, to circle back on your question, for the young players, it's just a great opportunity to get their first feel, to get their first taste. And the other beautiful part about USA basketball, this is when the veterans really come alive, right? This is when they can be a huge part of setting that tone, not just the coaches, but those vets. I mean, they've been there. They know what it's like. And with the way that they act.
Spelled out in plain language. The veterans are the ones setting the tone. Not just the coaching staff, but the vets themselves. The players who've worn the USA jersey before, who understand the hierarchy, who supposedly know how things are done. According to Sue Bird, it's their behavior, their presence, the way they move and speak that will teach the younger players how this system truly works. And that's where this story starts getting uncomfortable. Because once you look closely at who these veterans actually are, the narrative begins to crack. Paige Bueckers is there, right? Paige, who hasn't logged a single minute of WNBA basketball. Not one professional game. And yet, she's reportedly being positioned as a point guard option for Team USA. That's not speculation, not internet chatter. Multiple outlets confirmed it ahead of camp. Suddenly, we're hearing constant talk about veterans establishing culture and guiding the youth. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark just completed a rookie season that rewrote the record books. First team All-WNBA. Let that fully register. She led the entire league in assists at 8.4 per game, blowing past established stars. She shattered the single-season assist record with 337, a number many said a rookie could never touch. She ran an offense that dragged the Indiana Fever from lottery irrelevance into real playoff contention, and not just participation, but an actual playoff win. And now she's stepping into a Team USA environment where the messaging centers on veterans teaching young players, where Paige Bueckers, again without a single pro game, is framed as a floor general. And where the entire tone of the camp feels less about unlocking Caitlin Clark's brilliance and more about carefully containing it.
To the Stephanie White stuff, how did she get here?
I was wondering, you said you sent out a lot of invites and looking at the roster that's going to be in Durham this weekend. Why was it important for y'all to have Juju Watkins in this environment, knowing that, she is not able to really practice or play or participate in drills right now, still recovering? What kind
of Jackie Powell?
Hi, Sue. Thanks so much for taking the time. I'm just curious what went into how you selected Kara's assistants.
Yeah, Kara Lawson, the head coach of Duke. They're terrible, by the way.
And this is where the story turns truly unsettling. Because Sue Bird just explained how Stephanie White ended up on this coaching staff, and her explanation creates far more questions than clarity. Stephanie White is listed as a court coach for this camp, and that distinction matters. She's not officially an assistant coach. Not yet. She's here in a temporary role for this December training session only. According to Sue Bird, the plan was to blend WNBA coaches with college coaches to create a mix of philosophies and perspectives. Sounds reasonable on the surface. But here's the catch. This camp takes place in December, right in the heart of the college basketball season, which means college coaches were unavailable. So instead, Sue says they turned to a newer wave of WNBA coaches to bring in fresh professional voices, except that explanation falls apart the moment you look at Stephanie White's resume. She is not new to the WNBA coaching world, not even close. She's been in the league since 2015, when she served as head coach of the Indiana Fever. After that, she spent multiple seasons as an assistant with the Connecticut Sun, deeply embedded in that organization before returning to Indiana as head coach this past season. And that detail matters, because Connecticut represents the UConn pipeline, the direct connective tissue to Gino Orima's program, and the powerful network tied to it. Now here's the part that makes people shift uncomfortably in their seats. Stephanie White just coached Caitlin Clark for exactly 1 season with the Fever. That season ended only a couple of months ago. And it ended with Caitlin suffering multiple injuries, including a serious knee injury that sidelined her for weeks at the worst possible moment, when Indiana needed her most. The Fever's medical staff faced real scrutiny over how Caitlin's workload was managed. Questions surfaced about whether she was pushed too hard, whether her body was monitored closely enough, whether short-term wins were prioritized over long-term health. Even more concerning, the offense often looked disorganized despite having the most gifted playmaker in the league running it, raising doubts about the system Stephanie White was implementing. And now, less than 2 months after that season ended with Caitlin injured and the Fever eliminated from the playoffs, Stephanie White is suddenly part of Team USA, positioned to influence Caitlin's role on the international...